What is a cell? That's the first topic we're talking about cell. So I want to believe that we all know what a cell is, but for the purpose of those who probably might not know, we will quickly talk about a cell. When we talk about the cell, we're actually talking about the basic structural. In fact, it is the simplest, the smallest basic structural unit of life. Again, I said it is the simplest, smallest, basic, functional and structural unit of life. A whole lot of things happen from what we refer to as a cell.
You're not sharing the screen.
A whole lot of things happen from what happens in a cell. So if there is going to be any activity in a human or in an organism, it has to emanate from the cell. Every command that the body undergoes is as a result of the function of the cell. So we quickly want to look at what the cell is. We have different types of cells, and we'll pick it up from the components of the cell. Every cell has several components. Components of cells. Components of cells. Here we have nucleus. We have nucleus, which happens to be more or less the very most important part of the cell. It is this nucleus that houses the DNA sequence of the DNA components of the cell. It is responsible for everything that the cell comes out to be. The commands that the cell carries out is as a result of what the nucleus portrays. We have other components of the cell, like we have the endoplasmic reticulum. Like we were saying, we talked about the nucleus, and I said we have what we also call the endoplasmic reticulum. So what do we mean by the endoplasmic reticulum? The endoplasmic reticulum is another part of the or another structure that we have in the cell. It's another organelle that we have in the cell. The major function of the endoplasmic reticulum is to help in carrying out what we refer to as protein synthesis. It helps in protein synthesis. That is the function of the endoplasmic reticulum. Function of the red blood cell of the endoplasmic reticulum is to what? Distribute proteins and other materials throughout the cell. It helps in what? The distribution of proteins throughout the cell. Also, we have other ones like the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm. We have the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance that helps in bathing all the cell organelles. It is in the cytoplasm that we have all the cell organelles. We have the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, and other organelles that we will be talking about. We also have another one called the lysosomes. We have other ones called the lysosomes. And what is the function of the lysosome? The major function of the lysosome is the digestion of waste, that it helps in digestion, then waste removal as well as transport of materials. It helps in digestion as well as what? The removal of waste and transportation of materials out of the cell. We have another one called the ribosomes. The ribosomes. Yes, the ribosomes, its own function is actually where we have the protein being produced. Proteins are produced in the ribosomes. That is the site of production of the proteins that every cell has. We have other materials or organelles like the chloroplast. The chloroplast. Now, this is very specific to a particular type of cell, which is the plant cell. In the chloroplast or in the plant cell, we have a particular component called the chloroplast. The chloroplast is responsible for what we have in the plants that is responsible for them having their green coloration. The reason why plants have their green coloration is as a result of the function of the what? Of the chloroplast. Now, what does the chloroplast do? The chloroplast is responsible for producing a particular what? A particular component called the chlorophyll. The chloroplast is responsible for what? Is responsible for producing what we refer to as the chlorophyll. Now, the chlorophyll is actually the what? The green pigmentation that we have in the plant. It is responsible for the what? The green color that the what? That the plants have. Are we getting what we're saying? Plants generally are known to have green color, and this is as a result of the chlorophyll that is produced in the chloroplast. We also have some other cell components. We have some other cell components. We have some other cell components like we have what we refer to as the mitochondria. We have the what? The mitochondria. The mitochondria is known as the what? As the powerhouse. It's known as the powerhouse the mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. It's known as the powerhouse of the cell. Every function of the cell is engineered by what? A particular kind of energy coming from the what? From the mitochondria. So it is responsible for powering, it is responsible for producing the energy that every other cell organelle needs to carry out their specific function. So the mitochondria is referred to as the what? As the powerhouse of the cell. Also, we have what we refer to as Golgi bodies. We have Golgi bodies and Golgi apparatus. We have Golgi bodies and Golgi apparatus. Their function is to help export materials like enzymes and hormones. They help to export materials like enzymes and hormones which the cell makes. They are responsible for what? For synthesis and as well as what? Packaging and distribution of materials. One of the materials that they help to what? That they help to transport or to distribute are hormones. So let's quickly see what our question is talking about. So we have we have our questions talking about plant cell. So what actually is that question there saying? What the question is saying is, it said that which of the following characterizes a mature plant cell? Now, we have options here. The first option says the cytoplasm fills up the entire cell space. The cytoplasm fills up the entire cell space. Like we were talking about the cytoplasm earlier on, I said the cytoplasm is responsible, is the fluid component of the cell, which is what? The part that bathes all, it houses, or it is in the cytoplasm that every other cell component are bathed. It is in the cytoplasm that we have the nucleus, because it is a fluid component, it is a liquid medium. So it is in it that we have all what materials, like the nucleus, the vacuole. Okay, let me quickly do this. I think I still need to talk about some other components, like we have the vacuole. We have the vacuole. The vacuole is majorly a storage organ. It's a storage organelle. So what it does is to help what? Store all the materials that are produced in the cell. Materials that are produced in the cell are stored in what? In the vacuole. Materials like nutrients being produced, food nutrients being produced, or waste that needs to be expelled, they are stored in what? In vacuoles. We also have cell plasma, or let me call it cell membrane. Okay, sorry, let me call it cell membrane or plasma membrane. The function of the cell membrane or the plasma membrane, it houses all the components of the cell. It is inside. Let's assume we have something that looks like this. Let's see, we have something that looks like this. For an animal cell, for example, and we have something like this, which is our nucleus. Let's say this is our nucleus. And here we have something that looks like this as our mitochondria. Let's assume we have something here that looks like this as our endoplasmic reticulum. Let's assume we have another structure here that looks like this as our, let's say this is our ribosome. Let's assume this is our ribosome. We can have other organelles too. Now, it's possible for us to have something here like this, which is our vacuole. Now, all of this space here that we have here like this, all of these places that have dots, all of these places that have dots, those are the places that we refer to as the what? The cytoplasm. So it is in that cytoplasm that we have, it is in all of these places that we have dots here that we now have as what? Our cytoplasm. All of these places here, they are referred to as, let me put it here, they are referred to as the cytoplasm. Are we together? So it is in those parts that are labeled dots, that I call the cytoplasm, that we now have all the cell components what? Beating. Are we together? So the particular covering, this outer covering here, this part here that covers all the what? All the organelles, that is what we refer to as the cell membrane. So let me just quickly give us a better diagram of what I am talking about. So it is possible that we have something like this, something that looks like this. We could have something that looks like this. Are we together? And in here, we have something that looks just like this, which happens to be our nucleus. We could have another organelle here that looks like this, which is seen to be our ER, endoplasmic reticulum. We could have something here that looks like this, and we say this is our, let's say, mitochondria. And here we have our vacuole, the one that is responsible for storing materials, be it nutrients or waste materials. We could also have this place here signifying the ribosomes or the lysosomes, as the case might be. I don't want to bog us with too much diagram. So all of this place here that has dots, all of this place here that has dots, they are referred to as the cytoplasm. All of this place here, they are referred to as the cytoplasm. Are we together? Now, if we look at this diagram, it has two envelopes. This here, this one is the first envelope. Okay, let me put it this way. This one outside here is the first envelope, while this one here is the second envelope. That first envelope, the one on the outside, as this is an example of a plant cell. This is an example of a plant cell. So this first envelope is what we refer to as the cell wall, while the second envelope is referred to as the cell membrane or plasma membrane. Are we together? So it is telling us that a plant cell has two envelopes. It has two coatings, two sheets. The inner one, which is the cell membrane or the plasma membrane, and the outer one, which is called the cell wall. The cell wall is the reason why plants have strong backs, why they have rigid bodies. While the cell membrane is inner, that one is not as strong or as rigid as the cell wall. So let us go to our question now for us to understand what that thing is saying here. The question says, which of the following characterizes a mature plant cell? The cytoplasm fills up the entire space. So we know that either a plant cell or an animal cell, it must have cytoplasm because it is in it that all the materials should be waiting. And the second option there says the nucleus is pushed to the center of the cell. The nucleus can be anywhere. It can be at the center of the cell, either in plant cell or in animal cell. And then the third option rather, says the cell wall is made up of cellulose. And the fourth option says the nucleus is small and irregular in shape. The nucleus can, depending on how you choose to draw your diagram, the nucleus can have a semicircular shape, a barely circular shape, or whichever shape you want to give to it. But the difference or the answer to this particular question is the option C. Why are we picking option C? The answer to that is this. In animal cell, one of the major differences between plant cell and animal cell, one of the major differences that we have between plant cell and animal cell, let's quickly look at those differences. Between plants and animal cell. Difference between plants and animal cell. Now, differences between plants and animal cell. Sorry, please let me. So we have plants and then we have animal. One, here, plant cell has what? Cell wall present, while under animal, cell wall is absent. So in plant cell, we have cell wall because that is what gives it its rigid form. The back that plants have is as a result of the cell wall that it possesses, while animal cells do not have cell wall. So that is why their shape is the way it is. It can have different types of shapes. Another one, the second difference between plant cell and animal cell is that plants have chlorophyll. Okay, they have chloroplast that produces chlorophyll. Yes, plant cell has chloroplast that produces chlorophyll, but in animals, chloroplast is absent. In plant cell does not have plant cell has chloroplast, but animal cell does not have chloroplast. So that is the answer to that particular question. The question again says, which of the following characterizes a mature plant cell? So the answer to that very question is what? The answer to that question is the cell wall is made up of cellulose, because that is what the major thing that characterizes. Every other one can be specific, can be for plant cell and animal cell. Both plant cell and animal cell can have their cytoplasms being filled up by the entire space. Both of them, the plant cell and the animal cell, can have the nucleus being pushed to the center of the cell. The plant cell and the animal cell can have the nucleus to be small and irregular in shape. But for plant cell alone, that is where we have cell wall that can be made up of cellulose. So that is the answer to that very question. I hope that is clear. So the next question we have there, it says, which of the following is not a function of the nucleus of a cell? Which of the following is not a function of the nucleus of a cell? A says it controls the life processes of the cell. A says it controls the life processes of the cell. Let's see what B says. B says it translates genetic information for the manufacture of proteins. Translates genetic information for the manufacture of proteins. C says it stores and carries hereditary information. And D says it is reservoir of energy for the cell. It is reservoir of energy for the cell. Let us quickly see the question again so everybody gets in line and gets to understand what we are saying. The question says, which of the following is not a function of the nucleus of a cell? Option A says it controls the life processes of the cell. If you recollect, while we were trying to explain what cells are, when I said that cells are, or a cell is a structural, functional, basic unit of life, I made it clear that it is very important that every cell has its what is nucleus, because it is the cell that dictates what this, it is the nucleus in the cell that dictates what the cell will be. Are we together? So it is part of, it is in the nucleus that we have the genetic makeup of the cell. So let us see. It controls the life processes of the cell. Yes, it is true. Everything that a cell does is controlled by what? The nucleus. Every command that the cell carries out is controlled by what? The nucleus, because it is the nucleus that gives the command, even though we have some other organelles like the mitochondria that powers that activity. When the nucleus commands for something to be done, then it requires a particular energy that can push that action to be done, which is the function of the mitochondria. So, like the first option that we have here saying that it is responsible for what? Controlling the what? It says it controls, sorry please, it controls the life processes of the cell. Yes, the nucleus controls the life processes of the cell. B says it translates genetic information for the manufacture of proteins. Yes, the genetic information is embedded inside the what? Inside, we have it embedded inside the DNA of the what? Of the cell. So it is responsible for this as well. It's responsible for translating the genetic information for the manufacture of protein. This genetic information is what we have in the DNA. The DNA is also what we refer to as what? The DNA is, let me see. Let me quickly tell us what the DNA is. The DNA, for those of us who might not know, is referred to as, okay, DNA. This is the oxyribonucleic, sorry, the oxyribonucleic acid. So the oxyribonucleic acid. So we have it to be what? D, and here we have N and A. So that is the meaning of the DNA. So it is in this DNA that we now have the what? The genetic what? Modification, the genetic information of every cell. It is also embedded in the what? It is also embedded in the DNA. Are we together? Then it says it stores and carries hereditary information. Yes, it is also the function of the nucleus to what? It is also the function of the nucleus to carry hereditary information, because everything that every organism has is what it has what? Inherited from its parents. When we talk about reproduction, we have cells passing on some particular traits from the parents to the offspring. All of these inherited traits are what? Embedded or recorded in the DNA sequence. That's the genetic what? Makeup of every what? Organism. So the nucleus also helps to store. It also what? Helps to store and carry what? Hereditary information. The only thing that the nucleus does not do here is that it does not what? Serve as a reservoir of energy. While we're talking about the organelles of the cell, I made us understand that there is a particular cell organelle called, I called it the cell organelle. I called it what? I called it vacuole. That cell organelle, I said it is what? A storage site. I called it what? A storage site. It is in the vacuole that every what? Every organism has its what? Is materials stored, be it nutrients materials, be it waste materials. So that is where what? The cell has it stored. So for that particular question, the answer is what? D. Because the question is asking us to what? To spell out the one that is not the function of the cell, the function of the nucleus in a cell. So yes, the cell is what? Responsible for controlling the life processes of the cell. It is also responsible for what? Translating the genetic information for the manufacture of proteins. It stores and carries hereditary information. The only thing that the cell does not, that the nucleus in the cell does not do, is that it does not serve as a reservoir of energy for the cell. That is the function of the barcode. Are we together? So the next question there is talking about the fen, dominant phase in life cycle of a fen. Dominant phase in the life cycle of a fen. So how do we talk about, how do we answer this? The dominant phase in the life cycle of a fen is, it is not a gametophyte. It is not a gametophyte. Why? Because if it is referred to as a gametophyte, then it will need a fluid form. If it is referred to as a gametophyte, it will be needing what? Or it will be requiring a fluid form. So it is not what? A gametophyte. Also, it is not a prothallus. The answer to that particular question is C. It is what? A sporophyte. It is a sporophyte. So why do I refer to a fen as a sporophyte? I said it is not a gametophyte because fens are described, they are described as sporophytes. The gametophyte is a small heart-shaped structure which bears the sex structure in what? In eggs and sperms that are produced. Gametophytes, they are small heart-shaped structures that bear the sex organs in which eggs and sperms are what? Are produced. But the sporophytes, they are well adapted to dry conditions. Like we have in the what? In the fens, they are well adapted to what? To dry conditions. So that is the dominant phase in the life cycle of what? Of a fen. Now I need you to understand, when we talk about fens, we have it's a plant. Yes, it is a plant, and when it grows, when it germinates, it has a particular component that grows underneath. Let's assume this is the soil surface, and we have the plants like this. Let's assume we have the structures, the leaves like this. We have the leaves like this. Now, under the soil here, we'll be having something that looks like this. Now, this is how a fen looks. Underneath the soil is, or in the soil is where we have what? Its root looking like a stem. That is where it has its own stem. It has its stem under the soil. And so we refer to it, it is more or less seen, or it is more or less looking like a rhizome. You know different types of rhizomes that we have. An example of a rhizome is we have the an example of the rhizome is that we have the rhizome, we have the ginger, for example. Ginger is a rhizome. We have yeast as an example of a rhizome. We have several types of rhizomes. What I'm trying to say here is, underneath the soil is where it has its own words, its own stem, and that is where it grows from. Are we together? So sorry, I didn't know I didn't share my screen earlier on, but we continue from where we are. So we have the third the question there, it says what the dominant phase in the life cycle of a fern is. So we said that it is what the sporophyte. Now the next question there is talking about care, animal care particularly. Parental care is exhibited by, we have toads, snails, earthworms, and birds. Now, we have 4 organisms here: toads, snails, earthworms, and birds. We know that toads are amphibians, but the moment they lay their eggs and their eggs hatch into tadpoles and they swim off, the tadpoles swim off, there is really no parental care that the tadpoles experience or that they benefit from the toads or the mother toad. And something similar to that is what we experience in the snails. Once the eggs are being laid and they hatch, that is where the parental care ends. Earthworms as well, when they are when the offsprings are being born, we have them clipping off the mother. The only organism here that has or that exhibits parental care are the birds. Yes, the birds. When you watch, let's use the fowls, the domestic fowls as examples. When the domestic fowls lay their eggs, you notice that after some times, they start, after they have laid all the eggs that they need to lay, a time comes where they start to hover over the eggs. They just have to provide warmth to the egg so that the eggs can be incubated and they eventually hatch. And from the time where the eggs are being hatched to produce the chicks, you notice that the mother hen keeps fending, protecting, caring for the chicks. So that is why we refer to the birds as organisms. In this set of organisms that have been listed here, they exhibit the parental care that can be given to offspring. All right, we have the next. The question here says, use the diagram above to answer question 6 and 7. The diagram above to answer question 6 and 7. And by what I am seeing here, the diagram in Roman figure 1 looks like a rabbit. The one in Roman figure 2 looks like a crocodile or an alligator. The one in Roman figure 3 or Roman numeral 3 looks like a frog or a toad, an amphibian. And Roman numeral 4 is a Pisces, a fish. So the 6th question says, with respect to their decreasing dependence on aquatic conditions for reproduction, which of the following is the correct arrangement of the animals represented? The question again, with respect to their decreasing dependence on aquatic conditions for reproduction, which of the following is the correct arrangement of the animals represented? Now, let us look at this. Pisces, the fishes, they are dominantly aquatic organisms. The whole of their life is in the waters. We have the amphibians, the frogs or the toads, and the crocodiles. They also live in water, but they have the ability to survive on land. The only one that doesn't go into the water here is the rabbit. Are we together? So when the question is asking us to list in decreasing dependency on aquatic conditions, that means we want to start from the one that mostly depend on the ones that mostly depend on aquatic conditions. I believe the one that depends mostly on aquatic condition is going to be the fishes, because without water or without an aquatic environment, the fishes cannot perform or carry out reproduction. So the fishes are very, very more likely to be unable to perform reproduction if there is no way for them to have themselves in water. So the fishes come as number 1. And then it is followed by what? The frogs. Because the frogs and the toads, they lay their eggs in water. It is in the water that they also carry out mating. Remember, we're talking about reproduction. It is in the water that they carry out mating, and that is where they also lay their eggs. So they come next after the after the fishes. And then we have the crocodiles following in number 3. And lastly, we have the rabbits in position 4. So if we look at it in decreasing order, we'll be having 4, 3, 2, 1. So the option that has that, I think the option that has that is option B. Option B has Roman numeral 4, 3, 2, 1. So that is the order in a decreasing dependency on aquatic condition for reproduction. The fishes depend mostly on water for reproduction, followed by the amphibians, because they also mate and lay their eggs in water. It is in the waters that the eggs will hatch and become tadpoles. Also, the crocodiles or the alligator, the reptiles, they come in number 3 before we now have the rabbit as the number 4. So that is that about that question. The next question says, which of the animals represents the oldest creature in terms of evolutionary history? Which of the following animals represent the oldest creatures in terms of evolutionary history? For those of us that are very familiar with evolution, I want us to know that we have what we refer to as evolutionary proofs or evidences of evolution. So those are the things that we'll quickly be talking about now. So before we go to that, let us quickly see what evolution itself is talking about. What is evolution? Evolution is just talking about the changes of organism from the prior states that they are to the current states that they are. Are we together? Evolution is talking about the series of changes that have occurred in organisms over a lengthy period of time. That is what evolution is talking about. Now, we have theories of evolution, several theories of evolution that has been postulated. The foremost, the one that we studied this day, okay, Lamarck's theory was the person that started this the study of evolution, and he made some postulations, and then we went further to study what we refer to today as the new Darwinism. That's the modern day evolution. Are we together? So we have what we refer to as the modern view of evolution, where we talk about mutations, we talk about gene flow, we talk about genetic drift. Genes, let me just speak that, the modern view of evolution. The Lamarck that started the theory of evolution was actually talking about how organisms have evolved from a particular condition to the condition they have now. We know what tolerance is, we know what adaptation is, and Lamarck is now trying to tell us that organisms have adapted to several conditions, several environments, and so they have changed their form and their structure. Are we together? That is what Lamarck is telling us. Lamarck is telling us that several organisms have changed their form and their structure. So, and that is why they have evolved. So to what I was saying, the theory of Lamarck was actually trying to tell us the two major theories that he postulated. One of the theories is that he said that he was talking about the use and disuse of body parts. And what that meant is that when organisms tend to use a particular body part over a period of time, that particular body part gets to become very, very structured to the system. It gets to what it gets to be adapted to the system of that particular organism. So what we are saying now is Lamarck actually was talking about how the body parts that an organism makes use of, how it tends to what get modified, how it becomes changed from a particular condition to another. So when he was talking about the use and disuse of body parts, he cited some examples. One of the examples he cited was the use of bulging muscles. Now, what he was trying to say is, when you use, okay, the first theory he used was the use and disuse of body parts. The use and disuse of body parts. Now, talking about the muscles, for example, when you tend to use your muscle for tasking exercises, when you exercise your muscles very often, you tend to see that the muscles, the biceps and the triceps, they get enlarged, they get developed because of the continuous use of the what? Of the muscle. And the moment you stop exercising these muscles, you get to understand that there will be what we refer to as wasting. Wasting here is talking about the relapsing of the muscles. All of the muscles that have become very, very firm and what enlarged, they start to relapse, they start to reduce or to shrink in size. So that is what wasting is talking about. So when you use your muscles or when you use the particular body part, it gets developed, and when it is not being used, it tends to what? To relapse in what? In its function. So some of the examples he gave was talking about the giraffes. He said that the earliest form of giraffes had short necks. And so he cited an example of what happened to the giraffes while they started, while the ancestors or the ancestral giraffes had short necks, and the ones we have these days are with what? Long necks. He said that there was a time when there was actually what we refer to as famine and drought. And so as a result of the drought, there was no grasses for the ancestral giraffes to feed on. And so they had to start fending for themselves. They had to go in search of grasses, in search of plants that they can feed on. You know, giraffes are herbivores. They depend on plant produce. It depends on grasses. So they started roaming about for what? For grasses. And so they came to a point where they found a tree in the whole of the vicinity. Some of them, before they even got to the tree, some of them had died off. So the ones that survived getting to the tree, they were happy, and so they started feeding on the leaves of the tree. They ate off all the leaves that were in their reach, and so when they could not have access to the remaining leaves on the tree, they started stretching themselves. They started stretching their heads, their necks, so they would be able to reach the leaves on the tree. And as they were stretching their necks started elongating. There was gradual increase, gradual, steady, and continuous increase in the length of their necks. And so the necks of the ancestral giraffes grew longer than it were. And so that was the first theory that Lamarck was able to postulate, which was accepted by every other scientist in the environment then. And then the second thing he talked about was that those acquired traits can be transferred to offsprings. He said acquired traits can be inherited. He was talking about the inheritance of acquired traits. Now, when we talk about genes, we make ourselves understand that genes are embedded in our DNA. And genes do not get altered. They don't change from birth till death. Genes do not what? They do not change from birth till death. The moment the organism is born, the organism what? The organism continues to what? The organism continues to what? Experience that particular. It continues to experience that particular. The organism continues to experience that particular gene sequence. All of the functions of that particular gene is what the particular gene will be what experiencing. The characteristics that have been embedded in the DNA sequence of that gene will never change. It can never be altered from the production of that organism till the time the organism ceases to exist. So that became a contrasting what proof for the theory of Lamarck. He was saying that acquired traits can be what transmitted from parents to offspring. When we know that genes that are, it is only what we have on the genes that can be transferred to what offspring. Traits that are acquired from the what environment cannot be recorded on the gene because they are not genotypes. They are not what? They are not genotypes. They are only what? Phenotypes. Are we together? They are phenotypes. Whatever you have on the gene is what we refer to as the what? As the genotype. But if it is not on the gene, if it is only an expression of the body or the physical expression, then it is referred to as what? As the phenotype. Are we together? So at that point, it was problematic for Lamarck to continue to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the acquired traits can be what? Inherited. So, and that was where Charles Darwin had to come in. So Charles Darwin was able to explain what Lamarck was unable to what? Explain. So Charles Darwin built on the study or the theory of Lamarck. So Charles Darwin made it clear that most organisms produce large numbers of offspring, more than the amount that is expected to survive or to reproduce, so that there can be continuity of life. That was one of the postulations of Charles Darwin. And then he said that the size of a given population remains fairly constant, even if there may be fluctuations. That the size of the population will remain fairly constant. Yes, there is a possibility of some organisms dying, but while some are dying off, some are being born. So the population will remain fairly constant. Charles Darwin also said that individuals within a species always show variations. Yes, between a species of organism, there is a possibility of slight differences. So Darwin also said that these variations are more favorable to existence in given environments than others. So it was easy for Charles Darwin to prove that those. It was easy for Charles Darwin to prove that the animals are unable to pass across. They are unable to pass across their the materials that they inherited. So that led us to talk about the evidence of evolution, and there are different types of evidences of evolution. We have the fossil records, we have biochemical similarities, we have molecular records, we have comparative anatomy, as well as embryology. The fossil record is talking about fossils, for example, are materials that have been buried for millions of years that are now being explored. One of those materials is the crude oil that we see today or that we have today. Are we together? One of them is crude oil. Another one, we have radioisotope dating. With radioisotope dating, it is possible to be able to date using certain chemicals. And that is virtually what the archaeologists do. They are able to measure the date of a particular to measure the date of several organisms. They know the date and the time that what organisms were in existence, as well as talking about biochemical similarities. Now, where I am actually going to is the comparative anatomy and embryology. Talking about embryology as one of the evidences of evolution. Embryology says that all organisms have an ancestral feature of being like those that were found in water. That all organisms tend to have gills. That our development has evolved by modifying and enlarging an existing genetic material. That even animals, what it said there is that even human embryo has gill slits. That is why the embryo of a human being, while in the womb of the mother, is in a fluid medium. The embryo is in a fluid medium in the uterus. The uterus has something called the placenta in it, which is bathed in water. Now, right from conception, the embryo is already alive. So how is it able to survive in that environment that is fluidy, that has water? It is just because the particular organ has something that has it, or that helps it to be able to that makes it possible for it to breathe in that environment that it is. And that thing is the gill. The gill that some these materials process. The gill that the embryo process is the reason why it is able to survive in the in the fluid medium that it finds itself. So the question again says, which of the animals represent the oldest creature in terms of evolutionary history? Now, the one that experiences the oldest form of evolutionary theory is the Pisces, because the Pisces have gills. So every other organism here that have lungs for respiration, they are assumed to once have the gill system. So the gill is the organism that is assumed to have the oldest creatures in terms of evolutionary history. So that is that about that question. The next question there says, which of the following groups of cell is devoid of true nucleus? Which of the following groups of cell is devoid of a true nucleus? Are we together? And the options that we have there, we have algae, we have monera, we have fungi, and we have viruses. We have algae, monera, fungi, and viruses. Now the question is not telling us that which of them does not have a nucleus. What the question is telling us is which of them does not have a true nucleus. So it is going to be very easy for us to answer that question, because algae and monera, they are what we refer to as eukaryotes. They are referred to as what? Eukaryotes. We have the moneras, where we have the cyanobacteria, or we can call it cyanoalgae. Let me use that word, cyanoalgae, so you don't get confused. Cyanoalgae. So in some textbooks you will see the same thing, this cyanoalgae as blue, green algae. In some textbooks, that is what you see it as, the blue-green algae. And the other type of monera that we have the bacteria. So these ones, they are called eukaryotes. Are we together? They are called what? Eukaryotes. So what are eukaryotes? Eukaryotes are organisms that do not have what? That do not have cells. Eukaryotes are organisms that do not have the nucleus in the cell. Are we together? Sorry, I said they are prokaryotes. Sorry, they are prokaryotes. So they are prokaryotes, so they do not have what? They do not have the nucleus. Are we together? So the answer to that question is virus. Virus does not have a true nucleus. A virus does not have a true nucleus. Even fungi, they have nucleus because fungi is an eukaryote. The prokaryote there is talking about before nucleus. Here we have the prokaryotes, meaning before nucleus. That is what the prokaryotes mean, before nucleus. So, but the virus does not have a true nucleus, unlike the fungi that is referred to as the fungi is referred to as an eukaryote. Are we together? So the next question that we have there says use the diagram below to answer the question 9 and 10. Use the next question to answer the diagram to answer questions 9 and 10. So we quickly read the question. The main function of the feathers. The main function of the feathers covering the parts labeled I. So the main function of the feathers covering the parts labeled I is dash. Now, we have different types of feathers. We have different types of feathers. And we will quickly look at the types of feather that we have as well as their functions. Are we together? I will talk about their functions and their position, their description, their function, and their position in the body. Are we together? We have the one that is called the flight feather. The flight feather. The flight feather is found at the tip of the should I call it the nails? It is found at the tip of the nails. The flight feather they are all attached directly to the bird's bones. The bones in the wings of the of the bird. That is where we have the flight feathers attached to. And their function is to help the bird to fly. It helps It helps the bird. The main function of flight feather is to support birds' ability to fly. And then we have the down feathers. The down feathers are found located beneath beneath the birds. They are found, there's a particular type of feather called the contour feathers. It is under the contour feathers that we have the down feathers. Are we together? We have the down feathers under the contour feathers, and the contour feathers as well, they are found under the birds. You find them in the chest region of the birds. Their function is to provide insulation to the bird. Insulation in form of protecting the birds from extreme heat and then shock from the environment. We also have another type of feather called the semi-plume. semi-plumed feathers. In appearance, the semi-plumed feathers look like a combination of the contour and the down feathers. They possess both rashes and side barbs, and they are found mostly in birds like egrets. Egrets are those white birds that you see in the abattoirs on cattle. So those are examples of semi-plume. We also have the phyloplumes. The phyloplumes are located on the side of the bird. They are found on the side of the bird's body or on the wings. They are found on the side of the bird or on the wings of the bird. And so we have another type of feather, the last one. So this particular feather that we are talking about, this particular part of the bird that we're actually talking about, its function is to produce warmth and insulation to the bird. So the option that they gave us, they said prevents ectoparasite from attacking the animal. That is not the function of any of the feathers of the bird. Generate heat to keep the animal warm. Okay, that is an example. But the ones that actually do that, they are the what? They are the contour feathers that are found in this region of the body. The contour feathers and the down feathers. Are we together? Are we together? And so the third one says, the third option there says, provide some power for flight. Those are the functions of the flight feathers. The flight feathers are used for what? For flight. And so the last one says, serve as insulator to maintain body heat. So yes, this is where we're actually going. It serves as what? Insulator to maintain body heat. So this is the function of this particular type of what? Of feather that we have there, and they are called the down feathers underneath the contour feathers. Here we have the contour feathers, and here we have the down feathers. So that particular marking is for the what? It's for the down feathers, which have similar functions with the what? Called contour feathers. Now the next question that says, based on the shape and structure of the beak and feet, the bird represented is likely to feed mainly on. Now let us look at this. Let us look at the shape of the beak. If I were to ask anybody here, the shape of this beak here, it seems it is short and it is curved, and it is looking strong to me. And then on the leg, we have the claws. You can see how it is holding this, probably the branch on which it is standing, wrapping its claws around it. That tells me that this bird is going to be feeding not on nuts. If it feeds on nuts, it will not need sharp claws as it is having here. If it is feeding on nectar of plants, the beaks will be expected to be what? Long and thin. The beaks of birds that suck nectars of plants are always or usually what? Long and thin. Woodpecker, for example, have sharp, flat beaks. They have long, pointed beaks, and that is why they are able to peck what? They are able to peck trees, to make holes in trees, in the trunk of trees. Ducks, for example, depending on what they eat and where they are found, ducks have webbed feet. The feet of the ducks are webbed, not like these ones, and that is because they live mostly in water, so they need their webs to paddle in water. And then the beak, we have the beak to be what? Flat and serrated, so they can sift through molecules or materials in the what, in the water. But for this particular species that is drawn in this diagram here, it has short curved beaks and then long claws. That is telling us that it uses this claw, it needs these strong claws, sharp nails on the claws to hold and to tear. So most likely, and then it uses its beak for tearing flesh, for shearing flesh from bones. So this particular bird is like an eagle or a vulture. So I think it feeds on what? The answer to that question, the question says, based on the shape and the structure of the beak and feet, the bird represented is likely to feed mainly on. The answer to that question is what? Flesh. It doesn't feed on fruits. If it was feeding on fruits, it will have long beaks that will help it to suck the juice from the fruit. If it were feeding on seeds, it will need its what? Like this, like the beak of the nutcracker. The beak of the nutcracker looks like an actual nutcracker. For those of us who know nutcracker, that is how the beaks look. So they put the nut in the middle of the what, of the beaks, and then they crack it. And then it is not for sucking nectar. So it is for what? For flesh eating. Then the next question says, which of the following is true of the transverse section of a dicot system? Which of the following is true of the transverse section of a dicot system? A, the epidermis is completely encircled by the cortex. B, the xylem is more interiorly located than the phloem. C, the cambium lies between the cortex and the vascular bundles. And D, the vascular bundles are randomly scattered within the cortex. When we talk about, let's quickly look at what we are talking about for these cuts. We have different types of cuts when we talk about dissections. When we talk about dissection, we have different types of cuts. If we have a particular substance like this, and we cut like this, this is what we refer to as what? A longitudinal cut. Or a longitudinal section. A longitudinal section or a longitudinal cut. That is for this one. But when it is cut, that is longitudinal is from left, let me say from left, sorry, from left to right. We have it from left to right. But if it is this way, if we have it, sorry, please. The longitudinal cut is supposed to be from top to bottom, please. Not left to right. It's supposed to be top to bottom. Now, if we have it to be like this, going from left to right, this is an example of transverse. So this is what? This is transverse in nature. So when we cut from left to right, we are having a what? A transverse cut. Now, when we have this transverse cut, what we'll be having is, we have the structure of the cell. The epidermis is completely encircled by the cortex. That is natural. But the particular answer to this question here, it says which of the following is true of the transverse section of a dipole system. In the dipole system, we have the xylem to be more exteriorly located than what? Than the phloem. The xylem is going to be exteriorly located. It is going to be towards, it's going to be found towards the outer part of the what? Of the transverse cut. So the answer to that question is B. The xylem is more sorry. No. The answer should be D. Yes, the answer to that question is D. The vascular bundles are randomly scattered. Okay. Yeah. The xylem is more interiorly located than the phloem. Yes, that is the answer to that question. The xylem is more interiorly located than the phloem. That is the answer to the question that we have there. Because the epidermis is not always encircled by the cortex, and the cambium lies between, is not always between the cortex and the vascular bundles. And for this last option here, the vascular bundles, they are not randomly arranged. They are not randomly scattered within, they are arranged properly. The vascular bundles are arranged properly, so they are not scattered within the cortex. So the answer to that question is xylem, which is more interiorly, because after the when we have the cut looking like this, on the outside like this is where we have the phloem, and inside is where we now have the xylem. So it is interiorly located than what? Than the phloem. That is the answer to that particular question that we have there. And then the next question is talking about this diagram. It says we should use this diagram to answer question 12 and 13. So we just finished talking about xylem and phloem. If we look at this particular diagram here, this particular diagram is looking like a tree, and we have the leaf here. Then we have two vessels. One is having the arrow pointing down, and the other is having the arrow pointing up. And see the tip of the arrow here. Then if we look at this arrow is going into the leaf, and this arrow is coming out of the leaf. So this arrow here is Roman numeral 1. This arrow here is Roman numeral 2. Then we have this arrow coming down here in the tree trunk as Roman numeral 3, and the one outside here as Roman numeral 4. Now, I think this is talking about transport system. This is talking about transport system in plants. Transport system in plants. So we have different transport system or supporting tissues in plants. And one of them, we have xylem and we have phloem. We have the xylem and phloem. We have the xylem and We have the xylem and the phloem. These are supporting tissues. They are part of the reasons why the plants have rigid structure and framework. Now, their function. This one, the xylem helps to transport water, while the phloem transports nutrients. The xylem transports water, the phloem transports nutrients. Now, it is in the soil that we have water. Water is usually found in the what? In the soil, and then they are used by the leaves. So the movement of the tissue xylem is always upwards. The arrow, the direction of water flow is from the what? From the roots to the leaves. So water is being transported from the roots to the leaves, and that is why it moves what? Upwards. That is why we have it to be what? An upward movement. But in the case of the phloem, like I said, transports nutrients. Now, it is in the leaves that we have the production of what? Production of food materials and nutrients. It is when the leaves carry out photosynthesis that we have the production of starch, for example, and then that nutrient needs to be stored somewhere. So it is the function of the phloem now, the function of the phloem to transport the nutrients from the leaves that has actually carried out photosynthesis to the storage organ. In the case of the tubers, example of a tuber, we have yam, we have yam, and we have potato, for example. We have corns like cocoyam. We have fruits that store their own nutrients in the fruits, and some other materials. So all of these nutrients are transported to their storage site through the what? Through the phloem. So the phloem moves downwards. The phloem moves what? Downwards. It is what? A downward movement. The phloem transports nutrients downward from the what? From the leaves to storage organs. So that is what we have there. Xylem transporting water from the roots, because we have the water in the soil. So the water has been transported through the roots to the leaves, and then phloem transports nutrients from the what? From the leaves down to the storage organs, depending on the type of storage organ that the plant is using. If it is a bulb, like in the case of the onion, if it is a corn, if it is a sucker, and the rest of those. So the particular question we are talking about now, let us see. So we understand now that, okay, for this one here, let us quickly look at what is happening here. This is leaf. Now, during photosynthesis, okay, but before we go to, let's quickly see what our question is. Okay, the movement of material in the xylem and phloem tissues of the plant are represented by the arrows labeled. The movement of material in the xylem transports water, while the phloem transports. So xylem is going from the roots to the leaves, while phloem is going from the leaves to the root. So this one is upward and this one is downwards. So let us see the answer to that particular question. Okay, xylem, this one is going from the root to the leaves. So this one here is xylem, and that is Roman numeral 4. and then this one is Roman numeral 3. So this one here is Roman numeral 3 is Roman numeral 4 is our xylem, while Roman numeral 3, which is carrying out the nutrients to the root, as the case is here, is our phloem. So we have xylem is 4, while phloem is 3. Xylem is 4, phloem is 3. Okay. So, sorry. We have the answer to that question to be what? A. We have 3 and 4. Xylem 3 and then phloem is 4. So that is the answer to that question. So the next question that is talking about, okay, like I said, like I imagined, we have during photosynthesis, the arrow labeled 2 represents the arrow labeled 2 during photosynthesis. 2. Okay, this is arrow labeled 2. This is going out. Okay, going out into the atmosphere. So that is producing oxygen. Okay, the plant is giving out oxygen because it is using carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide from the air is being used by the what? By the plant, and then it is releasing oxygen. So I think that is production of oxygen. Okay. During photosynthesis, the arrow labeled 2 represents the escape of mineral salts, no. Absorption of energy from the sun, no. Release of carbon dioxide, no. Carbon dioxide cannot be released by plants. Carbon dioxide is used up by plants. So the answer is D, release of oxygen as a byproduct. Yes. In photosynthesis, the plants make use of carbohydrates, and they make use of carbohydrates, the energy in the sun, and carbohydrates and the nutrients in the soil to manufacture their food, and then in the process they give out oxygen, starch, and oxygen is being released as a byproduct. So the answer to that question is D, release of oxygen as a byproduct. Then we have the next question here, which is talking about this. Which of the following is lacking in the diet of a person with kwashiorkor? Okay. Now, a lot of people usually have a misconception about this. Kwashiorkor is not as a result of excess consumption of carbohydrates. No. Actually, we have what we refer to as what? Balanced diet. We have what we refer to as what? Balanced diet. Balanced diet. So what is balanced diet? Balanced diet is any food that contains what? All the classes of food in their right proportions. All the classes of food in their right proportions. We have several classes of food. and they all have their functions. The classes of food, we have carbohydrates. Carbohydrate is an energy giving food. Carbohydrate again is an energy giving food. It gives energy. That is what carbohydrate does. It provides what? Energy. So the energy that every organism needs is what provide in what carbohydrate, and there are different types of carbohydrates. We have the monosaccharides, we have the polysaccharides, and disaccharides. The monosaccharide has one sugar, the disaccharide has two sugars, and the polysaccharides have more than two sugars. And then we have the next one called the proteins. The proteins are they are bodybuilding materials. Proteins are bodybuilding what? Materials. They are responsible for the what? For bodybuilding as well as replacement of worn out tissues. So in the babies, in the young, in the teenagers, or in the children, protein is very, very essential because it is responsible for the development of what? Of the body cells. So they need what? Materials that will help them to what? Build their body, and that is why they are what? They are very much in need of proteins. And in the old as well, it serves the function of what? Replacing worn out tissues. So we have another type of material called fats and oils. We have the fats and oils. The function of the fat and oil, just like carbohydrates, it is also what? An energy producing food, and as well as what? Producing insulation for the what? For the organism. Fat and oil is what? Energy giving, and what? It produces insulation for the organism. Insulation preventing the what? The organism from experiencing cold. So that is one of the functions of the fats and oils. And then we have another one called the mineral salts. The mineral salts. Mineral salts here, they are additives. They are what? They are additives. What they do is to regulate the metabolisms of the body. Metabolism actually is talking about, okay, let me just quickly talk about, okay, I will come to that later. But I said mineral salts, they are what? Responsible for regulating metabolic activities in the body. Some of them are components of enzymes, pigments, structural parts. They are found as they are eaten as supplements. And then we have another one called the vitamins. We have the vitamins. We have the vitamins. We have these vitamins are of two types. We have the fat soluble vitamins, and then we have the water soluble vitamins. We have the fat soluble vitamins and the water soluble vitamins. The fat soluble vitamins, we have the vitamins A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. And then for the water soluble vitamin, we have vitamins B co, that's the B complex, and then we have vitamin C. So the fat soluble vitamins, they are called fat soluble vitamins because they are not what? They can only dissolve in fat. They cannot be dissolved in what? In water. While the water soluble vitamins, they can be what? Dissolved in water. So the examples of fat soluble vitamins, we have vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. And then for the water soluble vitamins, we have vitamin B complex. In vitamin B complex, we have different types of them. We have vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B3, vitamin B5, B6, B7. We have vitamin B9, B11, B12. Are we together? We have the cyanocobalamin as vitamin B12. We have the biotin as vitamin B7. We have, as vitamin B3. We have folic acid as vitamin B7. We have niacin as vitamin B1, and a whole lot of them. Pantothenic acid, vitamin B5, pyridoxine, that's vitamin B6. So they all have their names. So they all make up the vitamin B complex, and then the vitamin C. All of those are water soluble vitamins. Are we together? Are we together? So like I said we have vitamin B1, that is thiamine. Vitamin B2 is riboflavin. Vitamin B3 is niacin. You have vitamin B5 to be what? Pantothenic acid. Vitamin B6 is pyridoxine. Vitamin B12 is cyanocobalamin. Vitamin B9 is folic acid. You have the vitamin B6 as ascorbic acid. So all of those are examples of the water soluble vitamins. Are we together? And then we have another class of food called water. We have water, and we all know what water is. Water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. Then we have another one called roughages. We have what? Roughages. Are we together? That is another what? Another of the so that is another one of the another example of the classes of food that we have. Are we together? So the question that we are working on right now is talking about kwashiorkor. Yes. So we have just talked about the classes of food, and I made us understand that we have what is referred to as what? As a balanced diet. Now, apart from the balanced diet, we also have something called adequate diet. Adequate diet is what is produced for people who have what? Who have specific needs, specific nutritional needs. Example, somebody who has diabetes is not expected to consume too much of carbohydrate. So the person will be what? Placed on a diet that has what? Limited carbohydrate or limited starch. Are we together? Are we together? Also, somebody who does not have so, like we're saying, kwashiorkor is a particular deficiency or a particular condition that is having a deficiency in a particular class of food. Now, people used to say that kwashiorkor is as a result of excess consumption of carbohydrates. No, there is no amount of carbohydrate that you can ever eat that will ever be too much, because your body needs a very, very high amount of carbohydrates. Are we together? So what happens is the person is not supplementing the food with what? Enough protein. So which of the following is lacking in the diet of a person with kwashiorkor? It is protein. Somebody who is deficient of protein in the body will experience or show symptoms of kwashiorkor. And let us take this question before we go. The question here says, the mode of nutrition of sun dew, and bladderwort can be described as A. Autotrophic, B. Saprophytic, C. Holozoic, and D. Chemosynthetic. Autotrophic nutrition is a type of nutrition where the organism manufactures its food by itself. Bladderwort and sun dew, they are not what? organisms that can what manufacture their food by themselves. So that is not the answer to what that question. Also, they are not saprophytes because saprophytes feed on dead what or decaying organisms. And they are not chemosynthetic because they do not require chemicals for feeding. But they are what holozoic because they feed on what other organisms. They are holozoic, or we can refer to them as heterotrophic organisms. That is what they are. So the kind of mode of nutrition that they undergo is what we refer to as what holozoic nutrition. So that is where we're going to stop our class for today. If you have any question, you can put it down in the group and we'll pick it up from there. We'll answer the questions one after the other as they come. Thank you very much. Mr. T, Mr. T. Mr. Toheeb. Mr. Toheeb. Mr. Toheeb.